There's no sugarcoating it. Way too many of us either have so little self-esteem or harbor so much self-loathing, and having all that pent-up hatred can cause long-term irreversible damage. And while we think we're practicing self-love to counter this, we're actually not loving ourselves enough. As someone who's been there and struggled on that journey, this new installment of Mega Man and Chill, where I talk about whatever random topic while playing a random Mega Man game, will dig deeper into that. I should preface that I'm no mental health professional, so take whatever I say in this video with a grain of salt. This is purely experience based, but I feel like a lot of us could benefit from having more discussions about stuff like this, especially when many of us come from radically different backgrounds and there's no one size fit all solution to all of our issues. For example, most of my story today pertains to my experience of growing up as a black nerd and the challenges that posed as someone growing up in the perilous environment I was in. You'll understand how that played a part in my own struggle with self-respect as I delve deeper into the story. It's far from the only contributor, but I'm not here to give you my whole life story. I mean, I'll save that for an autobiography or something in the future. I was told a long time ago to write something like that for some reason. Honestly, a lot of inspiration for this video came from me reading Mega Ran's Dream Master memoir. The lyrics of his Dream Master song from his Forever Famicom album also put this topic on my mind. Mega Ran is a nerdcore indie rapper, but most Mega Man fans who are hip to him know him very well for his Mega Man based songs and insanely relatable lyrics. And that book was just the icing on the cake for me, given it was an amazing perspective from another brother in the creative scene with his experiences. So it made me think back on my own time as a little nerd in the past and all I had to put up with in my environment. Anyway, being a little nerd in the 90s and early 2000s was rough enough as is for anyone. Compounding that with the expectations of acting black, as my peers put it, and the constant pressure to not place a target on my head did not make any of that easier. A lot of my earliest memories of interacting with people outside family were me learning what I was and the environment I was forced to live in. And by the time I was old enough to at least grasp who my people really were, what they went through, and what our accepted lifestyle was, I had a damn identity crisis before I even left elementary school. All I knew at the time was that I was just some little awkward kid who liked cartoons, anime, video games, action figures, you name it. A little dummy with an expansive imagination that I wasn't too keen on at the time. It's kind of funny when I look back on it, considering my love for storytelling stemmed all the way back from when I used to craft carefully plotted storylines going on privately in my head, all as I played with my toys and such. And a lot of that bled into other aspects and activities in my childhood, but that's a story for another day. Add that to adults at my school suspecting that I was possibly on the autism spectrum. I was never tested and still haven't been to this day, by the way. I am almost 32. And that only piled more onto me to ponder as I tackled the issue of who the hell I even was. Sure, you're not expected to know who you are when you're like 10 years old, but being told I'm supposed to behave a certain way, talk a certain way, embrace the culture, and like certain things while disapproving of unappealing things in their eyes was a lot for a child's brain to process. And middle school is where shit hit the proverbial fan. Suddenly I had to be careful of who I hung around, not only for my literal safety, as middle school is where a lot of black kids are introduced to the darker side of our culture and environment, but to also not put a bullseye on my forehead for bullies to strike. Back then, the only accepted things to not get picked on for, at least for little boys in the hood, was Dragon Ball, sports, cookies, and certain video games. Liking anything else was just asking for smoke. Plus, I was an easy as hell target, man. I was a damn stick figure as a kid all the way into high school. So the moment folks picked up on me being a nerd, on top of all of that, established to them that I was the opposite of what a typical culturally accepted black teen was supposed to be. And that's where the identity crisis really kicked into high gear. Suddenly, I needed to quickly find a way to shield myself from future threats, because being bullied is not fun, trust me. I've been there. And it's when I had to put on a mask, so to speak, further suppressing the person I was trying to figure out who I was. I think you know where I'm going with this. I started learning the slang, started talking more black, which is bullshit, by the way. There's no such thing as talking black or white, but I'm not going there. And most importantly, hid as much as I possibly could about my hobbies. God, if anyone in middle school found out that I was still playing with toys back then, holy shit, I'd be more grilled than burnt fish. I took what little of my personality that I understood and just buried it in the public. I'd only reveal myself to fellow nerds who also adopted similar strategies of survival. Having a mask or a persona was a necessity in my environment. You didn't want to look weak, but you also couldn't be too withdrawn, as that just attract attention from the wrong people wondering why you're so quiet. Because yes, I was also the quiet kid and I got that question a lot. Especially when risking being in these schools with literal psychopaths. When you grew up in the neighborhood that I was in, schooling with kids from similar neighborhoods, being on guard and not drawing too much attention to yourself just came with the territory. I've been witness to what gun violence was at a way too early young age. So the fear kind of just expanded tenfold when I knew certain kids either had weapons, had access to them outside of school, or just would straight up beat my ass if I were on their radar. I still vividly remember on my way off the bus one day in high school. It was raining like some assholes were dumping buckets from the clouds. It was a bad downpour that day. And amidst all that, there was this kid in a hoodie who just randomly brandished a pistol. He carelessly shot it in the sky with no regard to where the bullet would land. Why? I have no damn clue. From where I stood, he just did it to show off to his friend next to him with his new toy. And I was right behind this kid when he did that, trying to make it to my parents' house, which was literally just a block away from the bus stop. Then after he shot it, he finally realized I was behind him. At that point, the loud bang made me internally panic, which, by the way, my body does not respond well to loud noises of any kind, especially when it's up close. Probably a symptom of my undiagnosed autism, but who knows? But I couldn't just give in to my body's demand to scream and run away. I was in front of another kid with a weapon who could have easily pulled it on me if he wanted to, because that random act of shooting in the air wasn't giving him the best first impression. So battling that fear, I had to put up the mask or I probably would have died, which was what was going through my mind at the time. When we made eye contact, I forced a rather devilish grin as to signal, "That was so cool, bruh, do it again," to the dude without words. He seemed to have gotten the non-verbal message because he and his buddy just laughed it off and kept walking. They probably thought I was an absolute psycho with his own gun for smiling so creepily after watching a dude fire a gun point blank and not appear to be shaken over it. But yeah, just knowing what kind of physical danger I was in on a daily basis necessitated the need to develop my persona. Of course, it kind of caught up to me later on in high school because people legitimately believed I was a serial killer in disguise, and that impaired my ability to make friends, but maybe that's not a story I need to tell today. But all of this suppression was destroying me without realizing it. All of this pressure to act like someone I wasn't and actively being punished for who I really was really solidified a very dangerous belief onto me. Being yourself will either kill you or ruin you. Because once I got out of high school and was thrust into the real world, man, it made me realize that school was the tutorial mode. You see, there was no longer any brats to make my life living hell for what I liked and being who I was. So the need for the mask disappeared, or so I thought. I won't get into the details of my post-high school experience with the real world, as that just trigger emotions and memories I'd rather not revisit. But the more I tried to nurture the real me and let him come to the surface for all to see, the more I got burned for it. So I reluctantly put the mask back on, hating both the fake persona and the person cowering behind that mask. I tried to be me, but the real me was beaten and bruised by all the ideals and opinions of those who imposed themselves upon me. Yet the fake me didn't even know what to do because people weren't as naive as children in school, so he got his ass beat too from the people who saw the mask for what it was. So the mask didn't even last that long after high school. What was left to do other than to just let the mask crumble and become totally exposed? And that's when I entered a lot of dark moments in my life, where an absurd amount of experiences with other people over the years pretty much mentally tortured my exposed, self-loathing true identity. All I could do was just clam up, take the hits, say everything's fine when it really wasn't, and just lost all sense of meaning. It didn't help that all the years of masking in my childhood brought about some long-term side effects. For one, because of me slanging my speech for so long to blend in, it bled into the way I actually talked without the mask. I grew up talking like someone who I wasn't, and while I've definitely done a lot of work over the past decade to successfully erase 99% of those mannerisms, some residual effects of that still affect me to this day. When I have to catch myself from saying something in an ignorant way, I have to keep reminding myself with stuff like, "Dude, your mask was destroyed a long time ago. It's okay. Speak naturally, like this." It was difficult to even speak to people about my interests, goals in life, or anything, out of fear of being on the receiving end of someone's criticism or, the worst case scenario, literal abuse. Everything I went through with others was a constant reassurance that I was wrong for being who I was, and the decisions I'd made in my life were terrible. I was misunderstood. Hell, I still am to this day. But I'm here to tell you one thing. All of that is bullshit. While I wouldn't do a thing to change my past, part of me wishes that I could meet my past self halfway through all of that nonsense and give him the good old reality check slap. All the masking, self-loathing, and fear only stifled growth, no matter how justified some of it may have been. It delayed the growth, so to speak. So what if I were a nerd forced to live in an environment literally not made for my personality and interests? You just take the hand you're given and go as far as you can in the game with it. A lot of you more than likely didn't grow up the way I did, nor lived in the particular cutthroat environment I'm in to understand what I went through exactly, especially when living in the deep, dirty South, dear God. But fear aside, never mask yourself, never hate who you are because of the disapproval of others, never let fear win either. As it stands right now, today, I'd rather get killed or ridiculed for who I am than clam up and be someone I'm not, never realizing my full potential and fulfilling my purpose on this godforsaken planet. I've rebuilt my self-confidence from the ground up, as certain events in my life have helped see the error of my masking days. Trust me, as someone with experience, it is far more damaging in the long term to shield yourself with lies in the short term. And the more you disconnect yourself from the true authentic self from within, the more you lose sight of who that person is. And when the time finally arrives to show the world who you really are, well, you'll just end up forgetting who the hell it is. And the fake persona will take the reins instead. And you'll fall really hard. Harder than you would have if you've just been honest with yourself from the beginning. If you're a youngling in their teens watching this, or even one of my fellow little brothers and sisters in school who know the culture like I do, this especially applies to you. Be who you're meant to be, not what your peers say you need to be. Embrace your hobbies with pride and disassociate with those who wish to harm or judge you for being you. It'll hurt now, but you'll thank yourself later in life. Do what you need to do in life, not what they tell you to do. That's not me telling you to disobey authority or the adults in your life, but to be rebellious in the respectful, right way. These people want to change your core, your heart, and your destiny on this planet. Never let them do that. Be you, unapologetically. Love yourself, because guess what? We're born alone and we die alone. The most solid rock in your life is yourself, and if you can't even respect and properly take care of yourself, how will you be able to receive the love and admiration of other genuinely good people? I won't be religious on you, but I believe that's universally true regardless of which belief system you follow in life. Now, this is the part where I was going to cut to the usual slogan to end the video, but immersion break. If you're listening to this video in the background, you might want to start actually watching the video now, because I've got something very important to announce. A big one. I don't want you to miss it because it's going to be really quick. You ready? All right, let's get it. That's right, folks. It's finally happening. After nearly 2 years of hiatus for this channel's main projects, the 02 Remastered run is officially happening, and I'm already well past the halfway point in recording the stages. This run is not being done on an emulator, but rather my actual GameCube via the Game Boy player with the Game Boy interface software. So yes, OG hardware on the original GBA cartridge, the way it was meant to be. I know people will ask me about the controller, and no, I'm not using the GameCube controller. It's ass for these types of games. I'm using a third-party knockoff of the Hori digital controller, which was optimized for the Game Boy games. However, I've done a little experimenting, such as replacing the D-pad and the L and R triggers with actual buttons and internal pads from the actual Super Famicom controller. This is honestly the most comfortable, lag-free experience ever in my opinion. I can't wait to show this off to you guys. While 02 isn't the most flashy or technically advanced game of the Zero series, there's still a certain charm to just normally speed running the game and working with what's available, all while still styling where possible without impacting my speed too much. This will be uploaded all into one big movie video, yes. However, this is the new format I teased a while back. My tentative idea is to just release all of my future runs into one video going forward, then make a follow-up post-commentary video on them, along with my In My Suffering clips weaved into it organically, if there are any. 02 in particular is a pretty easy game to run, so I might not even have EMS clips to show off this time, so just a heads up there. There's no release date for this, for I'm terrible with deadlines, but based on the current pace I'm going going, I'm already done with 2 stages after the aircraft bombardment mid-stage, and will definitely finish this run quickly. Keep in mind that I still have obligations over at my Magnus channel, which I've been severely neglecting as of late. What's new? So just know that I can't work on the Z2 remastered run every day. And yes, Model PX run will still happen, so please stop asking me. Just let me finish what I can do one by one, and I promise it'll happen next. But for now, I've got all this stuff to do, so thanks for listening, and always remember to stay chill, y'all.